This episode of the Get Fast podcast is brought to you by TriVelo Coaching, where we help triathletes and cyclists like you train smarter to race faster. You are joined by your host, former Australian Ironman Champion Gerard Donnelly, and I am Jordan Donnelly. In today's episode, we have a lot to discuss. The main topic of today's episode is the art of time trialing, and there's a reason that time trialing is on the forefront of our mind. The Road Masters Nationals Championships was on last week, which include individual time trials and team time trial performances, which we're really excited to talk about today, but also so much happened over that weekend, both from a Masters perspective and a TriVelo perspective, but also on the elite stage that we want to discuss. So we're really excited to talk about that. But firstly, as always, what has caught your attention?
Without doubt, George, watching your journey over the last 3 years, trying to break the elusive 800-metre sub 2 minute holy grail of track and field athletics. And last night we witnessed you not only beat it, but obliterate it. And it was one of the most rewarding and proud moments I've had as a coach, but as a dad as well, to see you struggle for 3 years and never, ever give up. And the lessons in that are unbelievable for everybody listening. And that's what caught my attention. And it's caught my attention for the minute you started that run to the minute you crossed the line, and the whole night last night and all day today. I just can't wipe the smile off my face because the journey is so difficult, and that's what makes it so special. And to see you persevere and believe and trust in the process and never doubt it, and even though you didn't achieve it for such a long time, it became more special in the end, and it built up to such a big thing that it was becoming, geez, I'm making this too much. I mean, are we making this too much? Because it seems almost unachievable here. Yeah, you just proved once again that if you trust the process and are 100% committed and do some of the little things that we've banged on about in our podcast for 70-something episodes, and you believed it. You actually epitomized, what we've been talking about. And, doing the result was great, but there was so much satisfaction in seeing that, it does work if you do actually. Ed Sheeran said, I was a crap singer and a crap musician, and the harder I worked at it, funnily enough, there was no other outcome than me getting better. And that's exactly true. It doesn't matter whether you're a singer or a runner or a writer or in business, if you continue to try and improve yourself, there's no other outcome that's going to happen except you will.
Well, I had a good coach in my corner, so, so that really helped. Thank you. I'm running off very little sleep because I had so much adrenaline last night after the race that I couldn't get to sleep till 2:30 a.m. And for any runner that knows, when you do a big lactic session or race, you get the post session or race cough, the runner's cough. I'm worried I'm going to be coughing a lot on this podcast because I'm still coughing from last night. But there are some lessons I want to talk about based on what you said. A lot of the lessons that we've spoken about over these podcasts, I just can't believe how many of them applied to me the last month, and how many lessons you've ingrained into me that I was able to use the last month since that last race where I came onto the podcast and said that I told the story, and that actually put a lot of pressure on me over the next month. I had a lot of people asking me about the next race. I had more people than I was probably prepared for tuned in or waiting for the result, which put a lot of pressure and expectation, and I did put a lot more pressure and expectation on myself. So managing that was pretty interesting the last month, and I was coming into the race going, am I going to get onto the podcast and say I failed again, or am I going to get on and say I did it? And I really didn't want to do the first option.
Isn't that interesting? Some people would think that that's could be a negative.
Yeah.
And you've used it in a positive way to motivate you to. I don't want to talk the talk. I want to walk the walk, and I want to come back with a success. And I think you used it in a really good way. But you've got to think about that. That is, you are putting a lot of expectation on yourself, which can be counterproductive. And you've just got to be very careful about doing that. And I think how you handled it was the right way.
it's probably one of the first lessons I wanted to touch on was you always speak about getting to the start line confident. You want to be standing on the start line and just be able to say, I'm confident and I've done the work and I've done the preparation. And what it did do by telling everyone about it was over the month, I really put my head down, and because I wanted to get to the start line prepared, I didn't want to get there and have that kind of expectation from others and myself, and not be prepared. So it helped throughout the month of training just to stay really focused.
Especially in those days and weeks during the training weeks. I don't feel so good today.
Yeah.
And I've got to do 8 200s at 26 seconds.
Yeah.
And geez, at the start of this session, this is going to really hurt.
Yeah.
And the motivation of, how am I going to feel when I stand on the start line?
Yeah.
Am I prepared?
Yeah.
And you could stand there and go, there isn't anything I haven't done in the last month since that last race. It's going to give me that 0.05 improvement. And you ended up doing 2 seconds quicker, not 0.05.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you speak about it from a triathlon sense. Often when you go to a triathlon race, it might be interstate. And so you have to take your family, pay for accommodation for your family, book flights. It's not just the race you're doing. The race entry is $1,000. You know, you're putting a lot of expectation on this one race that you're training for if it's a big 70.3 Ironman. And so that can actually have the same positive result if you let it, where you go, well, I'm sacrificing a lot of hours here. Yeah, my family's letting me train this many hours. I'm investing a lot of money. That can keep you accountable in your training program. You've got a coach, you know, especially if you're paying for a coach. All that stuff really does help to keep you accountable to the goal in that preparation phase. So when you get to the start line, you are confident.
That's a really good point. And I was I was very careful in some of the instructions I wanted to give you pre-race, but essentially I wanted you to, you know, we had the race plan and I wanted you to just do your thing and not overload you with, you know, keep it simple is always going to be the best way. And the only one thing I wanted to say was, when you do set your race up from the very minute you start, when the gun goes, and you had a plan to run at this pace to the 200, and then if the pace slowed down, come through and move up so that you get to the first 400 in 58, and then if the pace slows down, you have to keep moving. But you get to the top of the straight at the 700 meter mark, and you've got 100 to go. You've done all the hard work. And are you going to, what decision are you going to make there with 100 to go when you are absolutely on your limit and your brain's saying, that's enough. I can't do it I can't go any harder. I can't. Well, you can look back not only in the training build, but in that last 700, how well did you prepare for this last 100?
Yeah.
And that was the only thing that I wanted you to think about was, don't do all that hard work for 700 and then throw it away.
Yeah.
And your last 100 was the most exceptional 100 you've ever run.
Yeah.
You lifted. We'd practiced that in training, you know, doing 200s or 150s with the last 50 lifting, high knee lift, and your form at the end, you know, and the 1%ers, when you drove from half an hour to go to Sherbrooke Forest for the last month, you gave up surfing for a month, you know, all these little 1%ers, you got new spikes, you know, they all contribute. You had a race under your belt. There's so many things that helped you achieve that one day. And that's the lesson we're trying to get across to the listeners is, you know, it's the journey and the process that gets the result. The result is the end of all that. You know, you don't get the result without any of that in between stuff. There's so many topics that you could talk about.
Yeah, and we will touch on that with the nationals results as well, because there's real big lessons in that. But measurably, I don't know if the spikes made a difference, or I don't know if, you know, not surfing made a difference. But like we said, we just wanted to put the head down for a month and give it the best shot. And even if measurably it doesn't make a difference, internally when you're standing on the start line, it does. You know, so even if the spikes don't actually make you go faster, you're doing all these things to give yourself the best chance. I want to take it back to yesterday a little bit, because I mean, there's a couple more lessons I want to talk about, which just I think apply so well to all racing. And it was a bit of a mental battle throughout the day, because you're just having a normal work day. The race is at 8 p.m. at night. You're going through kind of waves of emotions of sometimes it's nerves and anxiety, and then sometimes it's, you know, ready for battle tonight and, you know, excited for the race. Then times of feeling like, oh fuck, I don't want to stuff this up, and then feeling confident in the preparation and going through all day is definitely an interesting experience. And I'll be honest, I probably stopped working at about 2:00. I couldn't concentrate. Spent the afternoon just starting to mentally prepare, and I was doing a lot of stretching and just getting the body right and listening to David Goggins. He actually said something that did help me in the last 100. He said in one of his videos, he said, when you don't listen to your body, it will adapt. So
that's such a good sentence.
When your body's screaming at you,
don't listen.
And if you don't listen to it, it's only next option is to adapt. So, and again, measurably, I don't know how true that is, but I just was thinking of that when the lactic's hitting and every step it tells you to slow down.
At the 400 to 500 meter mark, you started to feel average, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you did actually do that there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So basically from that afternoon right through it was a funny mental process. I was stretching in the living room for about an hour straight, and I was really trying to go light because I didn't want to overdo it. But my housemate, who she knows nothing about athletics, or she's kind of looking at me going, "Is this a big special race or something? What's going on?" And I said, "Well, it is to me," because the way I was preparing, it looked like I was preparing for a national title or something. It's just a Tuesday night PB run.
And that's a good point, because it doesn't matter. Every person, whether you're riding C grade club race or whether you're doing your first triathlon, it's special to you.
Yeah.
And you want to do the best you can.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that Will Walker said that last week. Some of the best races you do, you don't have to be in the elite men.
C grade Tour of Bright.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, getting to the race, I was, by the time I got there, I was feeling really confident. I spoke to you about the fact that I was internally feeling more confident than I had throughout the day. But I didn't feel good in the warm-up physically. So mentally I felt good, but I sometimes in the warm-up you feel on. And I did actually last month. And then last night I really didn't feel on. Physically I felt a bit off. So that throws a bit of a spanner in the works, when you've got that confidence. And so I said to you that I was walking to the start line probably a few minutes before the race, and I just noticed that I was too relaxed. And in sports science, they talk about the optimal
arousal.
Yeah, optimal arousal level. So it's basically an inverted U. So if you imagine an upside down U, the optimal arousal level is the very top of that U.
The bell curve.
Yeah. So if you are just to the right of that, then you're over aroused. And if you're just to the left of that, you're under aroused. And so you want to try and and I was definitely under aroused, where I was too relaxed, I found myself. So I kind of worked myself up a little bit, thought about the pressure of the race again to try and bring back some nerves, and because I just felt like I was too relaxed. I didn't want to go into the race just thinking you're not going to let this go by not concentrating properly. But this brings up the next lesson, which you always talk about, which is a race most likely isn't going to go perfect. And this is such a thing that that you say triathletes fall into. You're rarely going to have a perfect race. Most likely, especially over a 6-hour race, something is going to go wrong. So you have to have a plan B, you have to have a plan C. And in a 2-minute race, things happen so quick. We had kind of plans for every type of scenario. But I went through 400 feeling really average, way more. We were bang on time. Actually, I can't believe how perfect the race panned out externally. It went almost as well as it could go. But internally, I was really struggling and hit the 500 marks, so 300 to go. And in my head, I went, geez, I'm really not feeling good. But then having to have that plan B and go, well, what do we do here? Because we're on track. You're not feeling good. So just adjusting slightly, trying to settle down the back straight. And then, like you said, it's just with 200 to go, you've got a decision. Do you, you've done all the work, do you let it go, let it get away from you, for me, I just, I think I dug as deep as I ever have in a race. So that was probably more satisfying that I didn't feel good, yet found that anyway. But I just couldn't believe all the things that we spoke about, just how so many things had to combine to really get that mindset right. And that was why it was so rewarding. And I think listening to you talk about it from all race forms, I just can't believe how much it applies to everyone. And if you are thinking about all these things, you're going to give yourself the best chance of a successful race.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think the mindset is so underrated. And you were a classic example of that, actually not feeling that good on the day, but your mind was so powerful and you could see it in your face. I was at the, for those who understand athletics, 400 metre track, I was at the 200 metre mark calling times for Jordan because he could see the times. They have a big clock at the 400 metre. So I was telling Jordan what his first 200 by calling out, 26, 27 seconds. And then when he gets to the 400, he can see it's 58. And he gets back to the 600 and I'm telling it's 124, 125, 126. Well, he knows he's got 30 seconds to get to the finish line in under 2 minutes. So there's clear information, and hearing that mentally, you think all of a sudden you've got this race as long as you finish, and having more information is going to mentally help you go, oh God, I've got myself in a good position here, and all I've got to do is execute. Whereas if you're getting there, and I could see it in your face, I could see your face change from when you could hear that time. It was like, right, now I've got a job to do.
Yeah. That's the one of the biggest lessons we talk about with TriVelo is data. How valuable data is, and in this running sense, it was just a time. We're not even looking at power or average pace or whatever. But especially not feeling good, you can get to that 200, and had I not had any data, I could start to panic and go, the race is getting away. I'm feeling average. I'm slowing down because you don't actually know what the time is. So you could talk yourself out of the race almost, but then to hear that was so reassuring.
But the reason you were feeling average was because you were running at a pace that was at your limit, all-time history limit. So but then hearing that this is okay because I'm under schedule is reassuring, as you said,
Yeah, so that was it really, and
it was certainly a really there was so many good lessons in the whole night, and whether you'd achieved it or not, I'm sure you would have kept going till you did. Even though it's been 3 years, and it's like the monkey off your back, and just for everybody out there listening, it's just another example of if you want something bad enough, you will achieve it, no matter how hard or how high the bar is that you've set. There's been some ridiculous bars being set, but that was one. When you were an 18-year-old, I think you ran 2.5,
2:04 maybe,
something like that. And for 10 years, you've gone 2:03, 2:02, 2:01. So it's not really 3 years. It's kind of since you were 18 when you were actually able to run fast. And to actually, take all that time, it's just so special. But, we're going on a lot about this, but the lessons is what we're trying to get across is, you can improve yourself, and it just didn't happen because, you did, normal training for a month. You changed a lot of things from the last event, and if you do the same things over and over and expect the same result, you're going to get the same result. But if you do something well and then add some extras, the 1%ers, sleeping better, getting better at your nutrition, training with better intent, and you rattle them off.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, I think this transitions into what caught my attention, and the topic of the discussion today is I was so inspired by the TriVelo performances last week at the Nationals in the time trial, and to see not only, the performances across the whole were exceptional. Obviously, the standouts were seeing our athletes Grant, Joe, and Jules win the individual time trial. Just to see the execution, and then to see 6 other podiums as well. It's the same lessons, just in a different sport. The lessons of preparation. You've seen these guys put their head down. Seeing the form they've been in, seeing the training they did through COVID that led all the way up to and carried through to January, Feb this year, and to see that result in a win. There's just something so special about setting a personal goal. And we always say on the podcast, it's not about the podium, it's not about the gold medal. So in my case, last night wasn't a win, it was a PB. But for everyone's results last week, which we're about to talk about, it was really inspiring just to see. The age range as well of, we've got 35-year-old athletes right up to 65, all with the same goal, the same level of preparation, the same intensity. It doesn't matter if it's a national title or not. But that was extra special last week to see, Grant, Jules, and Joe pull out those winning individual performances.
Yeah, and look, it was great, as we just said, to see them win. But there were other guys in our group who smashed their PBs, and they might have got 5th, and or 4th. And to me, that's equally as, as their coach, I'm so wrapped and proud that they've actually, executed, prepared, and got the desired result, which didn't happen to be a podium, but was, a big improvement on what they've done previously.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because especially in a time trial, you are competing against yourself. So you can only do your best.
Yep.
And if that results in a win, great. And if it doesn't, and I'm going to blindside you a little bit here and ask you, because you came second, which you are not used to. And I know that would have stung, but you also rode incredibly well. You executed, and you said to me, you executed as well as you could have. So what are your thoughts kind of a week later, on that exact note, because you've ridden really well, and that's what you'd say to an athlete.
Yeah, well, it has been about 5 years since I've lost.
Yeah.
So it was, the expectation on yourself is probably the most severe, and the disappointment for your performance, if it was a poor performance, is hard to take. But when you perform as well as you can, I can't tell people to be happy with that and not do it to myself. So I've got to be happy. And if on the day someone's better than you, then you have to take your hat off to them and go, well done. You are better than me on the day. Fantastic effort. And that's the approach that I have to take. But it's a great fire in my belly to make me push myself to make sure that I can do everything I can to get as good as that guy. And that's great motivation for me. I love that. But yeah, I've got to be happy with the performance I did, if that's as well as I could do, and it was. The guy's just too good for you on the day, and at the end of the day, that's how you got to cop it. And it's inspirational for me. I love it.
Yeah,
I could not wait to start training again.
Yeah,
it's like bring on that, and of course we had the team trial the next day, so that was. I think I've never ridden that hard.
Yeah.
So it was really good.
Yeah. And
for every negative situation, there will be a positive. You just got to find it.
Yeah.
And as tough as it was to cop that, but the positive out of it is I'm super motivated. I can't wait. For the next opportunity to time trial again.
It's the response I expected, which is good. So I mean, it might turn into a little bit of a TriVelo love fest, but we do really want to talk about the overall performance of the individual time trials and team time trials, because we just were so proud and happy of how all the athletes did. But it's no coincidence, because we would say that time trialing is TriVelo's specialty, and that applies to both individual time trials in cycling, but also the bike leg in a triathlon is an individual time trial.
Don't devalue the road race.
Yeah.
We had winners there.
Yeah, true. So, absolutely. But I want to start with when we were there last week, and you see everyone warming up. You get to the TriVelo section, and we had the TriVelo tent, which is great, and there's all of our athletes all warming up on ergos, and everyone's in the zone. We've been to Europe and watched cycling races, and we've seen the pro teams warm up before sprint classics and these elite races, and I thought I was looking at a pro team. It was just so fun to watch and so cool to see everyone in their element, getting as well prepared as possible. And the preparation had started months ago, but on the day, I just loved looking around and just seeing how seriously everyone was taking the preparation, and the results showed. That you just looked around and I felt like I was looking at a pro team.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody's in their zone, and there's not much talk, and everybody knows what their warm-up routine is. They've got it down pat. It's not something that they're doing for the first time. These guys have done that warm-up routine. For some of those guys who've been with me for a long time, they would have done it over 100 times. And even guys who've just been with us for a short time already know it. And that is key to getting you on the start line on a course where the first 10 seconds you've got to climb a hill over your threshold. And then 30 seconds later, you've got another 2-minute hill way over your threshold. So if you're not ready for that, the warm-up is key. And just getting there in time and working backwards from your start time, don't underestimate how important those little preparation things are to getting you on the start line in that relaxed manner, saying, what's my plan? And, to me is, it's just, I just look around and just go, this is brilliant. You know, everybody knows their job, and there's no one asking me last minute questions. No one. I'm left alone, and because everybody's ready and focused on what they're meant to be doing.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that leads perfectly into today's topic, which is the art of time trialing. And let's start on that note with the preparation side, because for a lot of people, they would not work so specifically backwards like we do. You know, the start time is 12:36. You know, and it's so meticulous that it's get to the start line at 12:31, finish your warm up at 12:26. You know, go to the toilet at 12:22 or whatever, or 12:28, and then it's finish your last hard effort at 12:20. So it's, you know, you're really warmed up, but there's a certain amount of break towards the time. You know, it's that specific in terms of working backwards. Get to the thing 2 hours before to set up your ergo and everything, and it does take that level of preparation to execute your best possible performance.
Yeah, and there's still people turning up half an hour before their event, running frantically, getting their number, putting their transponder on, and having a 5-minute warm up, and then wondering, oh, I didn't ride too well today. You know, you just can't let those things happen to you. It's, you know, why do all this training? Why prepare for months to muck it up on race day? You should have worked out the night before what time you have to leave home. And I really encourage people to write down their schedule for the next day, from backwards, as you just said, from this, your start time might be 12:05. So you need to be there at, you know, 10:05 or 9:35, whatever you want. But you need to have 2 hours. And little things like, you know, I go out onto the course if I'm allowed to, and I get there early enough so that I can, because it's not closed. I want to see where the wind is. I want to know before I start, when I get up to this certain point of the course, the wind's going to be across me, or when I get to that part, it's going to be a tailwind. So that's going to change a little bit of my race plan, because I don't know what the wind's going to be when I'm preparing the plan 2 days out. You know, I want to know, is it changed? And that section becomes more important if it's a headwind than it's a tailwind. So those little attention to detail things, whether you're doing a triathlon, an 800 or a time trial on the bike, you need to actually have all of those 1%ers established before you actually, you know, start your effort.
These things just add up so much, and you can't underestimate, you know, what you've just said about the amount of detail that's required to execute, you know, your best performance. And the detail starts from months before. It's not just there is a checklist of, you know, maybe 20 or 30 things you need to be ticking off from months out. It's the training programs, you know, the biggest one, but then you want to be getting everything else right. And the TriVelo athletes we saw do so well last week didn't perform so well because they're the best riders. You know, they perform so well because of all these things. In fact, they're probably not the best riders throughout their group, but they were getting first, second, and thirds because of all these things added up. And
they're the best prepared.
Yeah, it starts from, you know, weeks out, getting their bike resurfaced, and then you know, months out, making sure their bike fit is as accurate as possible, and they get used to the bike fit.
And not 1 week out from the race. So you haven't had time to get comfortable in that position, because your muscles are going to change the angle from the bike fit. So all of a sudden you're using different sections of your muscle, the hamstring attachment to the glute, because you've lifted your seat a centimetre. All of a sudden you're using a different angle. So these things are so crucial that, you know, and also if you're not doing all those things now, you're not going to do it on the race. So it just formulates a habit of, you know, this is important. So therefore I'm not going to avoid it.
And, you know, we've spoken before about athletes taking the 1%ers to the extreme, doing altitude chant, getting their nutrition right. We had a lot of TriVelo athletes doing Dr. Harry's nutrition program. He was on the podcast last year, which, you know, for a lot of athletes, they lose that extra 4 to 7 kilos. Power to watt ratio skyrockets.
Yeah, and don't underestimate how important your nutrition is, not only for the weight you are on race day, but to give you the right fuel source to actually, when you're under pressure, to be using the right fuels. And if the body doesn't have that in it, it's like getting a petrol tank full of dirty fuel. The car doesn't function very well. Whereas if you've got the beautiful, clean fuel, your body is absolutely using all the resources it can from this great nutrition bank. The electrolyte levels are skyrocketed, your carb levels are fine. Your body's adapted to burning the right fuels in a high intensity race situation because you've been training that method of fueling and training for literally months.
Yeah.
And it's no coincidence that Julian's done that. He's lost X amount of weight. Grant's done exactly the same. Grant was the fastest time trialer in the whole Masters division on the day, and he's 45. And there were riders from 30 to 70 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was an outstanding performance. And Grant's gone from half doing it sort of thing, and I'm not being cruel, and Grant would know exactly what I'm talking about here, to totally committing himself to this outcome. And what a result. Of course, the win is we're talking about here, but his improvement was just phenomenal, just because of those preparation things that he was willing to do to make the difference. And, up until then, he's a good, solid rider, but he's a good, solid rider, and so is 500 other good, solid riders. What made him a better solid rider to be the fastest time trialer in Australia on that day was all the things that he was prepared to do.
Yeah.
And, people say, oh, yeah, but he's always a good time trialer. Or Joe's won, the last 2 or 3 years without losing a time trial. Yeah, but Joe's great. Well, Joe wasn't a time trialer 4 years ago. He was one of those really good solid riders.
Yeah.
And he's turned himself around to be, and it's the expectation again that, that Joe should do that. But the reason Joe does it is not because he's the best rider and always has been. It's because he's the best prepared, and he's prepared to do what it takes.
Mm. It sounds like we harp on this, but there's a real reason for it. And again, I just can't underestimate this preparedness thing, because if you made a checklist of all the things we want our athletes to do, like we said before, there might be 20 or 30 things, and if you're only doing 10 of them, you're giving yourself 30% as much chance to perform well as the person that's doing 30. If you're only doing 5 of them. And we see plenty of examples of people, not ever riding the course before a time trial in cycling and triathlons, never going into a course recon, missing some really key things that they should be doing. And if you're missing these things, you're just disadvantaging yourself compared to the person who's ticking all of them. And again, it comes to the conversation. Some people might say it's extreme, how, like the altitude, that kind of thing. How much do you really want to do? How much do you want to spend? But some of the costly ones you don't have to do, and we've spoken about this before. But there are some real fundamentals that don't cost money. They'll cost time and energy, like doing the course recon, studying the corners, that kind of thing. But if you're going to turn up to these events and you want to do as well as you can,
why wouldn't you give yourself more assistance? And the course recon's a tough one, because if you're doing a race in Cairns or Perth and you live in Tasmania, but you're going to go to the venue eventually, so get in the car and drive the course if you haven't got time to ride it. Mm-hmm. But get there early enough. I don't expect you to go and do a recon 3 weeks before if you live, 200k away from the event. And, we still did that for Ballarat. But when you, for Geelong 70.3, you make sure that you're over the course the day before in your car, or if you get there 2 days earlier, you can ride it easily, sections of it, because it's a 245k loop. The run, you need to know the run course. You roll your bike over the 7k loops, or I think it's 11k, whatever it is. Depending on what the course is, you can find out about the course, and there's ways and means of doing it, even if you live miles away, to make sure that come race day you're familiar with where the turns are and where the hard parts are and where the potential wind is.
Yeah.
And to underestimate those key things is just giving yourself less opportunity to perform better than you would eventually do on the day.
Yeah. So the art of time trialing, a big section starts on how prepared you are before you even get to the race, and then there is so much in the execution. But talk me through the race plan side of time trialing and what you said to the athletes going into Ballarat, because it was a bit of different advice to what they're used to.
Yeah, and look, pretty much I said everything I've taught you about time trialing, kind of disregard for this particular event because of the course. The course they selected at Ballarat for the time trial, which is just not a normal time trial course. It's got technical sections, it's got fast downhills, unbelievably fast, dangerous corners. It's got a lot of turns, and it's got 2 really extreme hills. and you do that 3 times. You do that course 3 laps of the same course.
So extreme the hills were that you tested the course on a road bike and time trial bike just to make sure that the time trial bike was faster.
Yep, and the time trial bike was going to be faster with the downhill section. Yep. So what you might lose in the uphills on the lighter road bike, you certainly made up for it. And if you had the right gearing, so the next thing was to make sure you had the right gearing, but the plan for the course was not to ride it like a normal time trial where I'm always saying, keep it even, don't have spikes, especially for triathlon. We don't want to have spikes that are going to cost us energy and really cause us to falter in the run. But even in a time trial, if you do too many spikes, burn too many matches, too much power spikes we're talking here, if you ride power that's too above, you're going to build the lactate up in your body, and eventually that's going to accumulate. So you actually can't ride properly at some point. Your heart rate's going to go through the red zone, and all of a sudden you can't push the pedals. Even though you are as fit as possible, you are going to put yourself into the zone where you basically can't pedal properly, even though you want to. You're mentally prepared to do it, but once lactate, that's a physiological thing that you can't, mentally you can't perform. You can still finish, but you can't perform it to where you want to perform. So the advice was, this is over one lap of the course is we had 4 or 5 vital sections where in time trialing, the biggest gains are in the hardest sections. The smallest gains are in the easier sections. So the question is to each athlete, tell me what the hardest sections are. Well, that's obvious. Up the hill. Okay, so we need to get the most value up of this hill because we're going to do it 3 times on this particular course. So if you can gain 5 or 6 seconds on your opponent on that hill, doing it 3 times, that's 15 or 18 seconds. And most of the races were won by less than 10 seconds or 30 seconds. They're the time gaps. And if you multiply everything by 3 laps, 2 or 3 seconds on this corner, 2 seconds on that corner, there's I think 15 corners. Well, there's 30 seconds in cornering, and so
just by knowing the course.
Understanding the course requirements can give you an advantage without being a better athlete, without adding any extra power, just by being technically clever. Getting aero on the downhill when you're doing 60 k's an hour, when the guy beside you might be doing 59.5, pedaling really hard. Well, just recover there. Get your heart rate down. They're the things you should be thinking about. Get aero, get tucked, corner properly at 65, 70 k's an hour. Lean the bike over. They're the things you've got to think about rather than the power. Yeah. And don't worry about your average power for this ride. Yeah. It's the power for those sections that's important. So in the downhill section, which was 2.5 minutes, I think the average speed was 57 k's an hour. Yeah. Well, most of the riders were within 5 seconds of each other. Yeah. But still 3 laps of that's still 15 seconds. Yeah. But it's not as much as a gain as if you actually beat someone by 10 or 12 seconds on the hill, which could end up being 34 seconds. So really the advice in the course was to ride it like an interval training session. And you just got to think I've got to really be at my limit on the hills, the two hills on that 1 lap, and maximize my gains there because I know that I'm going to get a recovery. So think of it, ride hard, recover like an interval session, over, under, over, under. Mm-hmm. So once we drilled that into everybody, that was their race strategy. And the only thing you worry about is they're going to go too hard on the hill. So that's the next thing you talk about is what's the optimum number for time? Because it was a 2 minute, between a 155 and a 2 minute 30 hill, and you have to do that 3 times. Plus there was a hill before it. Mm-hmm. It was a minute 30 or something at the same power, 110 to 115%. That's the range. I'm saying you can't afford to go over 115% here. On the last lap you can because you've got 1 to go and you know that this is the last hard hill and it's pretty much downhill except for the last section of the course, which is uphill again. But knowing all these details and knowing when to do your effort harder, it's so technical on that course. And I'm sure there were lots of riders who just were probably equally as good as our riders, but they hadn't planned the strategy of how to attack that course. And it was, no other time trial courses like that. We do time trial races everywhere, and the only other course is Kew Boulevard in Melbourne, where it's basically just rolling hills, and it's a series of intervals: over, recover, over, recover. And so they're the sort of things that was a huge advantage for our guys to have a race plan that, because I'd trialled it 3 different times, I'd done it as a steady state, pressure on the pedals, and I was literally miles slower doing it that way than doing it the way that, the interval style, which is not the way to time trial.
Yeah, and that's why it's an art, isn't it? Because just all these things add up, and there's so much to think about in terms of your execution. And when you combine what we've said about preparation into the execution of the race plan, you can see how, and we have plenty of examples of this with TriVelo athletes, where especially in a triathlon time trial, where the event is 40K or 90K for an Olympic, or 70.3, and we have riders who are finishing 3 or 4 minutes slower than other TriVelo athletes, but they're much better athletes than them, but they're not getting the art of time trialing right, and
yes.
the worst athlete is executing better across in terms of this evenness, in terms of their preparation, in terms of knowing the course, in terms of their bike fit, and it's resulting in a faster time, even though we've just seen this play out so many times throughout the years where worse athletes are smashing better athletes, and that just proves to me how much of an art it is, and how much is you have to take this stuff seriously.
It's such a great point, because if you lined up 2 athletes, A and B, one is really talented, one has got really good preparation, and the talented person cares nothing about the preparation, the secondary physically better athlete performs better. It's 99 out of 100, unless I was actually talking about it on the ride today. There's so many examples of people who, because they're so fit, they get away with making mistakes in road races because of their superior fitness. Yet the really clever riders are superior fit, but they don't get caught in the wind. They don't get caught at the back of the peloton. They don't attack at the wrong time. They're saving their bickies. They don't lose the wheel on a fast left-hand corner and have to accelerate back up, which has burnt some energy, which is going to cost them down the track. They don't do any of those mistakes. And the guy who's supremely fit, who's not clever, he's going to get smashed because he's making so many errors that are costing him energy. And at the end of the day, the clever rider is still going to beat. And if they were both physically equal, the clever rider is going to smash that person. So, the example you've just said is spot on. It's, don't underestimate that just because you're well prepared our program well prepares everybody. There's no doubt about that. That's the first and foremost thing that we, if without that, you actually can't even be in this position. But the next level is to do all these other things, these other percentage things. And as you said, if you listed 30 things and the really talented athlete only did 5 of them, and the not so talented athlete did 30 of them, he's going to come out on top. Because he's ticked off all the things that are necessary to get the right outcome to get his PB.
Yeah, and the reason that I say to people, time trialing is TriVelo's specialty is because of everything you just said. The fact that we practice it the most, it's ingrained into the programming. Everyone is doing specific time trial practice, every Tuesday morning, etc. And the beauty is when you take all these individual time trials who are this prepared and put them in a team together, what happens is a result of what we had in the team's time trial, which was an absolute clean sweep. So I did want to shout out the results of the team time trials after the individual the day after. The TriVelo teams just really swept it, and I am tooting the horn of our own athletes here, but it just has to be mentioned that we really looked like well-drilled, oiled machines who had practiced together, who each individual had prepared so well, and as a team, it just resulted in exceptional performances on the day.
The examples are just extreme. There's so many other teams who had really good athletes. And look, getting your own performance to be right on the day, to understand the nuances of the course and when to go hard and when to go easy, try putting 4 people together who have got different abilities and different strengths and different weaknesses trying to get them to stay together as a unit, because that's what it is. The team's time trial, it's such a harder job than the individual time trial as a coach. And so that's why we spend a lot of time training together as teams. And unfortunately, the teams that we're against they choose not to do that or don't have the opportunity. It doesn't matter, but they didn't do it. Whereas we got there, and we know that we've got in 4-rider team, we've got definitely all 4 riders aren't the same ability. So we've got someone who's our best rider, second best, third best, and fourth best. Know your role. If you're fourth best, your role is not to get dropped and to help if you can. If you're the best rider, your role is to stay on the front longer and not drop everybody and not show off. And so I saw teams from other clubs with really good riders who left their team and rode off. It's a team's time trial. It's not an individual time trial. Yeah. And, that's just defeating the whole purpose of planning and preparation. And what a terrible time those other teams were having. And when I'm on the course watching teams go past with gaps and riders being dropped, I'm shaking my head going, we've got these guys because they are just a disarray. They have no concept of how to ride a team's time trial for a start. So our preparedness in that is exceptional. And, I just love the way our guys all got together as a unit, as a team. They had their own little app going. What's our race plan? These are the areas where we need to focus on. The tough areas, the headwind, the hills. Who's stronger? Who should be on the front longer? What's our order? Who should go first, second, third, and fourth? So we've given all that documentation out. At the start. This is, we've got I've written an article which is only to the TriVelo people, and they all know. We go through all the points. And so it's no coincidence that come race day, out of the 4 teams we enter, 3 of them win a national title. Yeah. And one team, unfortunately, had one rider down, so they end up with 3rd. But, is that we just got the best riders, have we? Well, not really. We've just got the best prepared people. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, that's what makes it so much fun, is that your confidence in the process is... And the process is enjoyable too, because, for me to get up at 3:55 on a Tuesday morning to get down to meet the group at 5:30 to do the session, knowing there's going to be possibly 20 guys waiting, I can get out of bed to do that because that's part of the process. And I know that come race day at the Nationals, we're going to be so happy we did that for the last 26 weeks. Yeah. And what a payoff it is. Yeah. And I've never been so more confident in my life when I get on the start line with these guys around me. We're going into battle together, and the camaraderie and the excitement of sharing a victory. Things went wrong for every one of those teams.
Absolutely, that's the next point.
And
well, just watching all the teams, it was incredible how so many different things went wrong, and they had to do this lesson again of what's your next plan, are you switched on, and having practiced you could adjust, but so many things went wrong to result in a few of the teams were all within the TriVelo teams, different age groups were all within 20 or 30 seconds of each other, and it was just funny how that result happened with so many different things happening.
Yeah, on paper it looks like we just won all those races, but one of the age groups dropped their chain. Yeah. One of the better riders dropped their chain. Yeah. And, Joe won't mind me saying that, but he rode solo for a lap and a half to support the team in case one of the other riders was struggling. And guess what? One of the other riders did struggle, did his job, and Joe was able to get back on for that team to still win. Just plan B. Yeah. Plan C. Yeah. In our race, we had a similar scenario, and then our plan is if we drop one rider, then the next worst rider has to be more protected. Yeah. And he does way less turns so that we get 3 to the finish because it's taken on your best 3 riders. Yeah. And so you've got to have another plan. You can't just go in blindingly thinking this is how it's going to turn out, because such a demanding course with that hill is things are going to happen. Yeah. And it was so rewarding. People just see the result, but they don't see what happened to get that result.
Yeah, it was so fun to watch, and it was so rewarding and enjoyable to watch the presentations, to see the team camaraderie and everyone get their medals together, and just everyone had been through the same amount of work, doing the team's time trial practice on Tuesday mornings together. It was unreal reward to see all these lessons come to fruition, all the preparation stuff that we talk about, all of it come together to result in that. And the team's time trial is such a fun event. It really looks professional. I would love to see Cycling Australia push it more, push more clubs to get it, maybe have another event throughout the year for it, or have a couple more events where people can get more race practice in, because I'd love to see it become a really deep competition and become kind of a stalwart for master cycling. I think it would be really cool.
Yeah, there's so many examples, like the Milers Club that you went to in athletics, that just started from people wanting to just have a trial at PBs, So they started with 1 or 2 races, and now there's how many races?
Yeah, there was 40 races last night.
40 races of people just turning up to do a PB.
Yeah.
But, getting that jersey on the dais, the Australian national jersey, that's like winning a premiership with your mates. That can never be taken away from you. That those 4 people that you shared that jersey with, that photo you've got with you in the national jersey, and you'll get, in TriVelo we have the jersey ride.
Yeah.
And that's a great day for everybody. Anybody who's won a national jersey, we have on our bunch ride. And wherever you are in Australia, if you're a TriVelo athlete, you wear your national jersey on your next available bunch ride.
Yeah.
And people do that with pride, and it's like the victory drive home.
Yeah.
You've achieved everything. Your satisfaction of driving home, I just did that.
Yeah.
I now have a national jersey. I'm a national champion,
Yeah.
and that can never be taken away from you. Now, how well have you gone in your cycling career? Have you done okay? Yeah. I won the national team's time trial, and I've got a jersey hanging up. And it's something that'll always be there. It's just like the premiership that you've won at the netball, or the premiership you won in the footy club, or whatever sport it is. A team
C grade to a bright.
Yeah.
That's not a team, but yeah.
It means so much to you, and those group of guys you shared it with, you'll always have that in common. So there's so many little aspects of it that make the journey so much fun, because the destination certainly is rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. To finish off, how good were the elite road races on Sunday? Great performance by Sarah Roy in the women's to have a solo break to the win. Very just dominant performance. And then
she must have watched Julian Payner's move the night before.
Yeah.
Solo breakaway at the top of the hill and road to victory.
Yeah.
That was fantastic to see her. And she really had a good year before COVID. She was in the individual time trial. I remember watching her, and she was right up there, and she was in the road race. So she's a super talent. And there's lots of girls who are really improving. Sarah Giganti's an unbelievable talent, and a little bit more racecraft. She'll be a force to be reckoned with. So it's exciting to see so many fit girls coming through the Australian ranks. And of course, the Australian males have always dominated the scene. But this is really it's exciting to me to see the females and how they're racing and performing and training.
And good to see the strength of bike exchange compared to the men's as well. I mean, the women's bike exchange dominated, whereas the men's really struggled.
Yes, and they both got the same result. So it just looks like bike exchange dominated. But if you look closely at how they got there, talk about learning a lesson about it's never over till it's over. Yeah. Cam Meyer, I've got to say that's a Houdini effort there. Yeah. And talk about team, Luke Durbridge. If you were going into battle, who's the first person you'd pick? It would be him. He's just an epitome of sacrifice. Oh,
that's one of the greatest team performances I think I've ever seen on the bike.
Coming back from the dead, he was dropped 3 times.
It was amazing.
Cam was dropped off the main bunch.
Yeah.
Not even the breakaway. He was dropped off the main bunch.
It shows how exciting the race was. That it was just chopped and changed so much.
It's one of the most exciting races, and you and I have seen a lot of races in Europe. But as a national title, you didn't know who was going to win till the last second, the last metre. And, Cal O'Brien probably should have won that race.
Yeah.
Luke Plapp probably should have won that race.
Yeah.
But Cam Meyer won that race, and that's who will be remembered. But there was certainly lots of team tactics going on. There were lots of highs and lows, and I think Cam Meyer said something to Cal O'Brien, you're only as good as your worst lap, I think. That was really good advice, something along those lines. Is you're going to have bad phases in the race. It's how you can deal with those bad laps.
That was one of the greatest bits of advice, I think, any athlete could say is, how well can you deal with the bad part of the race? And if everyone can remember that, because the chances of you feeling good in an entire race are just so slim. So can you manage the bad sections? Again, so applicable to triathlon. I feel like with all these lessons we talk about, they're always exaggerated with triathlon because it's such a longer event.
It is,
it's
yes.
6 hours, so you're just much more likely to have a bad patch.
And look, only the pros in the elite cycling ride 4 to 6 hours in races, but yeah, if you think that you're the only one feeling bad, you've got to stop thinking that, because around you there's people who are feeling worse, who have got this great blank poker face that they're not giving away. That, you look at some guy pedaling beautifully, looking fine, and then the next thing, 30 seconds later, he's off the back, blown up. And going by body language is not something that you should be doing too much. I can definitely tell when someone's struggling when they go to a big gear and start grinding. That's a telltale sign to me. But generally, I get shocked when I see someone pedaling quite well, and then they just explode. So other people are feeling crap during the race. You've just got to think that if this is hurting me, and I think I'm pretty fit, what is it doing to the other people? So you've got to actually think about it like that, because there'd be times where you think, is it just me that's really struggling today? Well, if you look around, there's probably, if you're able to read people's minds, 50% of the people are feeling worse than you. So you've got to think that there are bad patches, and I've just got to get through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think as an event, that was one of the best road races I've seen in a long time. And I was sitting on my rollers, pedaling away. Normally I'm on Zwift, but I was actually on the rollers watching the last 60K, and I was just meant to be riding zone 1 and 2. And as they were going up the hill, my cadence started to improve and my power started to go. I'm going, whoa. I was just, as they were attacking, and it was so motivating just riding. I was laughing to myself going, whoa. Just getting carried away with this, how exciting this race is. And, just the never ever give up. And look, there's tactics there that, in hindsight, it's always easy in hindsight to say he shouldn't have done that and shouldn't have attacked with 65K to go. He's probably the best rider in the race, Luke. And yet, I think he went way too early. And had he done that with 2 laps to go, probably could have won the race. But, that's cycling, and hopefully we can learn lessons about, I suppose respecting the field you're racing against, and the fact that I heard he hadn't done a race of that distance before. So it's a really bold thing to do. I don't know whether that was a plan for Kel to win. So we don't know the tactics, but seemed like it probably was a good setup for Kel, and had he not cramped, he probably could have won. So there's lots in it that we don't really know, but from an outsider's point of view, that was what makes it intriguing as to what the tactics are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just having the ability to have a plan B or plan C in Cam Meyer and Luke Durbridge's case. The amount of times they got dropped and came back, and the workload he did, and just to, like you said, never ever give up right to the line. I loved when he said that he'd been in that position before that Kel O'Brien was in, where you're out in front, guys are mowing you down. His legs were heavy. He said, I know that feeling, and it's horrible. So that was his motivation when he was 60 metres behind Kel O'Brien. He just said, I'm not going to give up to the line. And if he didn't have that mindset, he wouldn't have got him, but he got him with 5 minutes to go. And
it was well done. Cam's not a sprinter. It was a mindset of, all of the experiences he's had in the past. And he's also been a breakaway leader for a lot of the race and lost, Cam. He's other scenarios. Jack Bobridge has done exactly the same thing and gone too early and lost. Cam's lost more races on the national titles, that he should have won, and yet he's won back to back, and he should not have probably won that one. But that's the swings and roundabouts. But he won that because it was almost 15 years of experiences that enabled him to keep the faith that if he just keeps in the race, keeps himself in contact, you never know what's going to happen next. And I do say that a lot, live the moment, because you never know what's going to happen next. Enjoy the process and the moment, whatever you're doing in life, because tomorrow, who knows what's going to happen to you. So make the most of every opportunity. And I think he's just hanging in there. and all of a sudden the race opens up with a metre to go, and he gets in front. And look, seeing the picture of him dropping his bike and then going over to Durbridge and just saying, "I only won this because of you." That to me was the epitome of great sportsmanship. Not an I am person. It was a person who understands what it takes, and that's what's admirable about Cam Meyer. I just think he's the ultimate in super talented. He's probably one of the best track riders in the world at the moment, and for him to win a road race 2 years in a row is pretty exceptional. But he understood that it wasn't just him. It was, through the efforts of Luke Durbridge, and he put a photo up on his own Insta story. It was just not him winning the race, crossing the line.
Yeah.
It was him hugging Luke Durbridge, and that was fantastic.
Yeah. No, I absolutely loved watching it. To be honest, I have just enjoyed sport so much last week. I'm obviously on cloud nine today after last night, but I just loved the fact that we had the Masters individual time trial and team time trial and crit and road race happening, and our expert SBS commentators, Matthew Keane and Dave McKenzie, were there from the very start on the Wednesday in all the Masters races, commentating every athlete, presenting all the medals right through to the end of the road race on Sunday. It's just so good for the sport. It's so good to see. And even from the level of, the athletics event last night, to see the organisers there, they're commentating every race, and there's A grade right through down to G or J grade, and every athlete's getting a go, and that's what it's all about. Everyone just wanting to run a PB, and triathlon's very much like that as well. It's a PB sport, and there are podiums, but I just love being around that atmosphere. And this last week really reminded me of that, of how good it is to be in that. And I think that for athletes, it's really important that you choose a goal to get involved in that, because it's so rewarding when you get to be a part of these events. And whether you are running a random track race on a weeknight, going to the Masters titles, or getting to watch the elite go around, all the lessons are the same, but the environment's really fun to be in as well. And I've had a really enjoyable week of sport.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to point out was the teams time trial, the amount of female teams that entered this year. That was terrific. It was double from last year, and the girls were having a ball, in all the age categories, and the competition was really solid, and I think they just loved getting up on that dais and getting their medals and getting their national jerseys, and I just want to encourage any teams who think, get together with your teammates and get ready for next year, and you've got a whole year to prepare and plan for it. Why not start now? And that's what it takes. It takes you to start thinking about that. Who's going to be in your team? Who do you want to be in your team? And that's how, the Milers Club started, word of mouth, saying this is a great event to be a part of, just like you're talking about, having the Matt Keenans and Dave McKenzie's commentate and present, read out your name and your, over 60 competitor. It means a lot, for guys who are commentating on Peter Sagan one day and presenting you another day. It's special for people who are putting in the work, and I think it's that's how the sport's going to grow. Well, I'm not talking about cycling. I'm talking about any sport. If at the grassroots level people are really putting in the time, the sport will boom. And that's kind of what we need, I think. Triathlon's a great example of what other sports could really do. It's a different topic we're talking about here, but it's certainly they could learn the lessons, because the PB thing is just trying to do better than you did last time, better than you did the day before. Tomorrow you want to do better than you do today. That's kind of what we're trying to push here. And sure, we talked a lot about the winners, but we don't do that a lot. But if you're just improving, and I heard someone last night as I was walking away, one coach was saying to his athlete, she said, "Oh, I'm not really happy with that." And he said, "No, you're improving, and it's just one day at a time. Be patient." It was just like rattling off all the cliches. It's not going to happen overnight.
No, she said it's 1 second at a time.
1 second at a time.
Bike riders can think about that with FTP. Like a lot of bike riders want a 10 watt improvement every time.
1 watt at a time, and it's so true. It's a journey, and you're enthusiastic and passionate about this journey. Be the same about the time period that you need to achieve it. And there's so many things to learn, as we've talked about. so often. It's just not turning up and competing. It's just being well prepared.
I'll attest to that because it took me 10 years to wipe off 4 seconds. That's a long time per second.
That's a good way to finish, I think.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess I'll finish by saying I thoroughly enjoyed having Matthew Keenan and Dave McKenzie give TriVelo a big rap on the commentary. They were going, geez, TriVelo really dominating here.
That's right.
I couldn't have enjoyed that anymore. So
terrific.
That's it for this episode. It was a really big conversation, one of our longer episodes, but like we said at the start, a lot to discuss, and it's really a conclusion of all the lessons that we talk about coming to fruition in real life racing. And so that's what we wanted to talk about today. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. Just as a final note, we actually had, we do get some emails back or questions from the podcast, and we actually had someone ask if we do TriVelo coaching for international, and just for any of our international listeners, I can see the demographics of who listens. We do have a lot of people in Asia, in the UK listening, in New Zealand, and other countries. We do international coaching, so if you do want to get involved, you can go to our website, trivelocoaching.com.au, and inquire through there, just so that's clear for those international listeners. But thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next episode.